Turn it on. I get it. Yeah, shut them all. Not that, but different version. Go ahead.
3, 2.
Like a kid in a candy store. All right, we're back with another episode. First, the sponsors. Head over to www.johnbartoloshow.com. Go check out a complete list of the sponsors. I got a time-sensitive guest today. I have to thank a few of the sponsors now, though. Sig Sauer. Go over to Sig. Buy something. Right On Optics. Blackwater Ammunition. Galco Leather Holsters. Volquartsen Firearms. Gallo Technologies. Rhino Metals. Pulsar Thermal Imaging Technology. Of course, Right On Optics. Appreciate everybody. Appreciate all you guys. Please leave reviews. Don't forget to put your headphones on. To the right, down. I got a special guest today. He's in town on a magic carpet ride. I got him for a limited amount of time. He's a busy man. He's everywhere. We have Dr. Beau Hightower.
This is a nice setup.
You like it, right?
Yeah.
You're like a kid in a candy store.
It's professional. We got cameras everywhere.
It's booms, mics, trusses.
I didn't know you were this fancy.
Magic carpet. You were in here when it wasn't sexy. It wasn't really sexy yet. We hadn't hit the stride. But I'm glad you came back. I snuck you in here.
I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, I went to treatment, and then I ran into this guy. I was getting treated. If you haven't checked him out, go check him out. What do you got going on? What's new?
Nothing, man. How's your shoulder?
Fucked up. No, it's great. Actually, I got to stop doing jiu-jitsu. That's the problem. If you stop doing anything physical, you won't have any physical problems, right? That's how it works.
That's true. It's like somebody said my problem is I'm getting older, and I said there's only one other way to not get older, and that's not really the best option.
Go to Florida. That's it. Go to Florida. I wanted to ask you. I was asking this in the other room. It's crazy, right? I feel like athletics through COVID, everything has been so wacky. And we talked about this, and I talked to Jay about it. What is it with just these bodybuilders just randomly dropping dead? Is it the gear? What's going on? Any input? Moment of silence? I mean, it's terrible.
Yeah, moment of silence for those guys. You know, one of the theories out there is that maybe, some of these folks did have COVID also, and they did have, maybe
got
heart
the treatment
inflammation or whatever. We just, we still don't know what the long-term consequences to any of this stuff is. And the sample studies we do have, I think it was Ohio State University. They had a study like 60% of the athletes showed scarring or heart damage from COVID. So, I mean, young, healthy athletes. So we just don't know. It does seem to be a clotting type disease. That could be related, but of course we know that, gear use, high gear use, having a high body mass index, those things are all associated with coronary artery disease and plaquing. And, we were talking earlier, it's like, man, if you're a man, and especially a gear user in your 40s, like, go get a calcium score. It can be a life-saving tool to see how much calcium, atherosclerotic plaque you have built up.
And that's not invasive.
Yeah, not at all.
Why don't guys do it?
Everybody go do it. Like, we see all these bodybuilders dropping heart attack, wrestlers, all of our heroes, dropping out on us. And yeah, maybe they should change their lifestyle. But if you're not going to, at least take an ounce of prevention, get your prostate exam, get your colonoscopies.
We laugh because these are simple things, right? And you would think more guys who would regularly get, some type of oversight in their life. There's a lot of reasons maybe why they don't. You think it's just that fear of like, I'm not going to go to a funeral, I'm not going to go to a hospital? I mean, maybe, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to live forever.
And take your blood pressure seriously too. Cali Muscle just had a heart attack, and he was talking about, how his blood pressure had been, so high for years, and people they don't take it seriously. The risk of heart attack and stroke associated with it. Like, it is a serious indicator into your cardiovascular health. So there's a reason why we have a normal range, and if you're over 120, over 80, you need to get that number down.
Have you ever had to say anything to anyone you were close to?
100%. Yeah, we'll have people come to the office that, we get their BP and they'll be like 190 over like 100. This is
just by looking at them though. Your background, you're kind of like, the look, and you're like, hey, dude.
Yeah. So the soft tissue work we do can be painful. So if you're clinching up and holding, you're artificially making your blood pressure go even higher, which if you do have a brewery or a plaque, it can break free. So we won't work on people if their blood pressure is that high. Then they get upset and they're like, oh, my arm's too big for the cuff and yada, yada, yada. They get upset with us. And we're like, listen, man, it's for your own good. Please go get this checked out, get it cleared by your physician, and then come back to us.
What a shame. So many good guys. I mean, Sean Roden being the most recent, which that was terrible. We saw a few guys, and I think in Sean's case, and I'm just paraphrasing, I have a lot of friends who are very close to him. It's extra tragic. Very young daughter, and everybody out there. I want to say this, whether you're a gear user or not, and Beau works on a lot of these high level athletes, you're putting your body under high levels of stress. You got to take care of your body, man. It's incredibly important because your blood pressure and your everything is probably riding a little high, I would think, right?
Yep.
Doc? I mean,
and in the this is funny coming from me, obviously, as a chiropractor, but in the alternative health community, sometimes we want to reinvent the wheel so many times, but there are some truisms that make sense. We've gone into this, cholesterol is actually not an indicator of heart disease, or
right.
Blah 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 blah. No. It's a grouping of factors, right? You have family history, you have cholesterol, you have bad cholesterol, and the fad diets and all these other things. Like we're seeing in real time people dropping dead at young ages, which we shouldn't see. And unfortunately, a lot of these people are on all these meat only or vegan or whatever. And the truth is, like, the sweet spot is in the middle.
Yeah. No, and I bring this up to everybody. Listen, full disclosure, Beau's a chiropractor, but I bring this up because he's around a lot of the same guys I'm around constantly. And it's a shame. We've lost some good friends, some people that have been great to the industries that we love and we support. And it's very difficult. It's a hard thing to swallow.
It is. It sucks. It really sucks for a multitude of reasons, For selfish reasons, for us having lost people that we really look up to and that we have so much respect for their discipline and their hard work and, setting an example. But then also you leave behind loved ones, and that's a tragedy.
Yeah. And Sean's situation, a very young daughter, they are doing a fundraiser or GoFundMe for her. If you guys get a chance, check it out. I meant to share it the other day. I know him and Guy Sestrino are very close, and Guy and I have been very good friends over the years. So it's a tragic thing when this happens, guys. And I know a lot of you out there like to say, play the steroid card or say this. Listen, there's a lot of factors, and we talked about this earlier. 5,000, 6,000 calorie a day diets don't help the most, I would say.
Yeah. And
just putting it out there.
Talk to a cardiologist, talk to an internal medicine doctor, and they'll tell you the same thing, that, just because you have a lot of muscle and low body fat doesn't mean you're healthy. Your heart is still working very hard to get the blood to the tissue. You're still putting resistance on the arteries and potentially losing elasticity in them. And, your body doesn't like a high BMI. And
no.
When we talk medically, and we've gotten into this aesthetics thing over time, but when we talk about BMI, what that means, right, the BMI actually is pretty relevant. I know we've tried to counter it and be like, well, I've got mostly muscle and low body fat, so therefore I'm
always ripped.
The data doesn't really support that necessarily. So, keeping a relatively lower body weight is going to help you out. I mean, there's a reason why women outlive men, and that is probably one of the factors.
Yeah. And listen,
aside from testosterone, potentially having, detrimental effects on the cardiovascular system, and aside from, men taking risky behaviors like jiu-jitsu,
fast food, fast women, and fast cars. No,
energy drinks, firearms, all the stuff we love.
Explosives.
Flamethrowers.
As you get older, you try to, they say settle down, but calm down as a guy, and we don't want to lose our guy card of being animals. But like you've seen over the years since we've known each other, I've tried to lose a little weight and take a little off, because carrying it as you get older is just harder, and that's the real reality. And I didn't realize when Sean passed, he was 46 years old. I mean, and he looked like amazing, and to maintain that's very difficult to do. And people don't realize the stress that causes and what it puts your body under. And you see these guys every day, and even guys trying to make weight in MMA and fighting, what their body goes through time over time. That's why you see people change weight classes and they have to change fighting styles, because when you're young and you could do cartwheels in the, it's great. When you get older and you have to, like Aldo's a great example of style changes through the years. And there's a lot of guys, there's a reason I would say some of the bigger champions get to a point where they manage distance so effectively that they don't have to take the damage.
Right.
They start managing damage.
Yeah.
I would say that's true. I just made that up. They're managing damage.
I like it. I think you should trademark that.
Yeah, I should trademark managing damage.
Managing damage. The new Managing Damage podcast. Here it comes.
So it is wild. Now, you're expanding, you're growing, you're always here, there, and everywhere. How's business?
It's good, man. We're opening another office in Albuquerque, so partnering up with another gym. We're going to open a Florida spot coming soon, so that'll be our 5th one. So we're up to 17 providers,
Florida's wide open now. DeSantis is about to offer you $1 million to go set up a new business. He's offering $5,000 a cops and, firefighter. Yeah, I mean, isn't that fucking awesome?
Hey, I don't want anything from the government. Just get out of my way.
Yeah, the people's government.
That's all I ask of the government. I don't want $1 from you. Just let me operate.
I thought that was really cool, though, that he did that $5,000 bonus for law enforcement. They wanted to come down. He's like, come on.
It's a smart business move, right?
Right.
Where I live, Albuquerque, We're losing cops. I think we have like 3 people for each section of town. I mean,
Wow.
We just set an all-time homicide rate at 135 or something like that.
Oh my God.
Well over 40 more than we've ever had before.
But you travel so much, you're not there as much, right?
I'm there enough to have my mail stolen every week.
Yeah. Okay.
You know,
Yeah,
and there's nothing we can do about it. So in my neighborhood, what they do is the locked mailboxes, they just leave them open to show the criminals that there's nothing to steal. This is the level of placation we've reached in our society.
This is the level. Amen. It's sad. It's reached all-time highs. Now, you've been following the Rittenhouse thing.
Yep.
What do you think?
Well, we were just laughing.
I know. What do you think?
The district attorney, trying to make it seem like a Full Metal Jacket is some sort of like evil, destructive form of ammo, and that this other good guy was carrying these nice, friendly, hollow.
We caught him with FMJs. we got him red-handed with FMJs.
God. And then, in his trigger discipline in the courtroom, he's pointing this firearm with his finger on the trigger, at I don't know if it was with the jury or where it was pointed at, but I was like, this is the guy that's lecturing people on safe gun usage? Oh, my God.
Yeah, I'm shocked that
he's next up to pull another Alec Baldwin over there.
I'm shocked that they didn't toss the case already. I really am.
Yeah.
I am. I mean, how do you see it playing out? I don't think he's going to get
Who knows?
Prediction. Is he going to get hit?
I don't know. We were just having this discussion. When we're in the court of law, people are always saying a reasonable person, right? Who is reasonable these days? Who the fuck is reasonable? Like, we're talking about a polarized country. This is a country where, part of the group wants to burn cities down and get rid of police. Another one wants to storm the Capitol building. Some people think JFK Jr. is coming back.
He's coming back.
The other people want to tear down all the statues of JFK in Washington and look for racism and everything. Who is reasonable?
No one.
How are you going to get 12 reasonable people on here to objectively look at the facts of the situation and not bring their own bias in? And I can't fathom that we're going to see that. And the other thing that weirded me out about this case, and I'm sure it has to do with the state laws, but I found it interesting that in the Chauvin case, they had a super team of prosecutors, not the district attorney, right? You had a bunch of private prosecutors that came in and took on one defense lawyer. Mm-hmm. It was like the OJ Dream Team, but on the prosecutor side. Mm-hmm. And in this case, we have the district attorney who's clearly not on the level of Rittenhouse's defense team. In my opinion.
I think this was listen. I'm going to say some stuff. This is me talking. Camera's on me. There's a lot of theatrics in this. I'm being kind in saying this. They wanted to get this kid to trial to hold him to some accountability standard. The problem is, like everything else with the left, and I'm saying this, I'm going to come out and say this. The problem is the left's a mess. If you're going to get someone to pull a gun on him or not pull a gun or pull a skateboard, let's do better than the guy with the rap sheet and 17, 12-year-old kids in his trunk. Let's do better than that.
Yeah.
That's where I would start. Yeah. Let's not get the guy. Let's not stage the guy that has a rap sheet the size of my arm and has been a pedophile, registered 19 times or whatever.
Yeah, and I was saying this too. Like, in a situation like this, there are no good guys, right? Like, I don't think Kyle's a good guy, but he's probably the best of the group. He
never should have been there, and I'll say it, Beau. I'll say it on me. He never should have been there.
Yeah.
17-year-old kid never should have been in that position. Did he handle it? Well, I think he handled it to the best of the ability of any 17-year-old. If you were to say my kid would have handled a shooting that way, they're damn lucky, and everybody's lucky, and including, again, for the sake of gun rights, he didn't turn and spray that whole crowd.
Right, and we obviously have the luxury of seeing all the data on all these people where the jury doesn't. But when you look at the two groups of people, you have a convicted pedophile, right? A convicted woman abuser.
Woman abuser, yeah.
6 times, I think.
6 times, repeat offender.
The other guy was a prowler, lurking around police.
Prowler.
Yeah, I mean, and then Kyle, I just saw a video of him punching a girl. There's no good guys here.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of it, but of course, to you and I, what's on trial here isn't Kyle Rittenhouse necessarily, right? It's the Second Amendment, and we have to be very careful here that we're not setting precedents that continue to creep more into our civil liberties, because we've already seen it happen with COVID. We've already seen it happen with a whole bunch of other things. And every single one of these issues ends up being a war on you and I civil liberties.
Well, I think it's inevitable, though, dog. I think at some point, I've said it before on this show, and I'll say it again. I think at some point we're going to lose the right to bear arms. That's not a question. At least the way that we know it today, it'll be very different in 5 to 10 years. And I say that because the organizations that represent us are so terrible at depicting us, and they're so terrible at controlling the narrative, and they don't value media. They don't see the importance of it. They don't value social media. They don't value any of the written word. They don't put any stock in it, and it's like a bear shit in the woods. For any victory they have, you don't know that it happened. And that's part of the problem. Plus, the national talking points on gun rights are terribly written and poorly executed. I've said it many times on this show. It's the only industry where when there's a gun rights issue, they put a Navy SEAL or a Special Forces guy on TV, which has nothing to do with the Second Amendment, has everything to do with showing and flexing the tip of the spear, and it's not representative of the industry. They don't put the FFLs on. It's the equivalent of me saying, because I just went to a chiropractor, I should talk about your industry. They literally put people on air that are enthusiasts that don't understand who's affected by this stuff and what's affected, and that's part of my issue with it.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's one of these interesting industries, and maybe one thing I've noticed during COVID is healthcare tends to be that way too, is where you have people that don't actually know anything or have any background in it that are the loudest voices.
The loudest.
The people that have the most to say. Last night I was flipping through the channels at the hotel, and Nancy Grace is on there, and she's going on the semi-automatic machine gun, and I'm like, and this is supposedly a conservative person to tell you that maybe there isn't really that much of a difference.
I think she's a closet liberal.
Like whoa, and they're like, look at that thing, it's black and it says Colt on the side, and every time you pull it, you could shoot 30 rounds in a second.
I'm convinced the media could make a musket into an AR-15.
My God, and the fact that term has now become such a polarizing term, right? And
I don't know why we battle people. Like, we're so quick to say AR doesn't stand for assault rifle, and that's another problem I have with the national talking points. Who cares what they want to call it? Stop repeating it.
Right.
Stop acknowledging it. If they want to call it that and that's what they want to call it, then fine. If you want to screw up the nomenclature, then fine. If you don't want to become smart enough to become educated on the topics and on the talking points and get those right and understand what these laws and what this legislation affects, then get out of the way. But unfortunately, at the national media level, they want someone who's selling a book, or they want someone who's going to make a splash, and that's typically how it goes.
Well, what was that? A couple years ago, this guy had a picture. It was like a piece of paper and a big hole in it. He's like, "This is the size of a round from an AR-15."
Oh my God!
And I was like, "Did he push the gun through the paper, or like, how did he get 223 to make a hole that big?" Like,
I can't get it. I can't.
What is happening? And I'm a novice when it comes to guns, right? But I know enough to know that these people are completely full of shit.
They're nuts.
But how many people don't know they're full of shit, especially in big cities where people don't?
Well, that's part of it.
Like New York, LA, where people don't own guns and they're not familiar with it, and they're fed this narrative by the media, which, of course, over the last few years, the media reports on it, and every single case after the fact is false. Whether it's the Russian dossier, whether it's, Jussie Smollett, whatever else, Covington kids, and I think we'll probably have something after this trial is over that ended up being bunk, but the media ran with it. Lab leaks.
Do you think it was a bat in Wuhan? Like, I think what I'd like to see, Doc.
And it's fine to say I don't know, right?
Right. No, I get it. I think what I'd like to see, though, is a stronger control of the talking points on all things. I'm joking about the bat, but on all things and on everything. People have to understand ultimately who's affected by this. And I think that's what gets lost in translation here. So when we start talking about topics like the Second Amendment, like, I like to hear from people that their paycheck might be affected, their business is going to be affected, their livelihood. I get the law component, just like I want to hear from when the freedom of speech starts to get pulled from people. I want to hear from the newscast. I want newscasters to stand up and bang the table.
Right.
Because that's what's going to make the most compelling argument. Now, all this medical stuff, which we're getting to, that's going to drive you bananas, seeing all this stuff, because you understand it and you see all this stuff. And I'm having Nurse Erin on, who wrote the book Epicenter Nurse. She's coming on the show at some point. Like you said, these non-medical professionals and people not even remotely tied to the field coming in with all these opinions from the rough and everything else. It's going to drive you nuts.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and what's interesting to me is, like, I've always been I'm a big rights person, right? No matter what it is, so I always want to push for more rights and not less rights. So for me, I was always a Second Amendment supporter, but maybe 4 years ago, I ended up getting this stalker, and he ended up living like right up the street from me. And he would drive by our office every single day and leave these notes.
Terrifying.
Throwing them out and just completely schizophrenic, bipolar type stuff. said I had cameras in his house, said I was trying to get him to marry him so we could sue the hospital, accusing me of every crime you could think of, abusing animals and, using economic espionage and using my military training. And this is a person who's not sane, who's not somebody that can be reasoned with, which I think you could argue with Rosenbaum and these other people. Like, there are people that they get off on this stuff, but like, if they can't be reasoned with, that's a good reason to protect yourself from them, right? And so I started having to, take different routes home, and they were finding these notes at the airport, and, I had the FBI show up, Department of Homeland Security, APD, but nobody was really doing anything. So I ended up having to file for a restraining order. Then you can't get the guy served, so I'm paying off-duty cops to try to go serve him. A complete and utter nightmare. So that was when I made the jump and bought my first firearm. Went and got training. Greg Jackson helped me out a lot with that too, and I continued training, and ever since then I've got a ton of firearms. My wife also is somebody that carries all the time. New Mexico is an open carry state, so our office is gun friendly. We always have firearms on the premises. We always have them on us, and like we tell people, listen, I'm a grown man. Leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. I'm not looking to fight anybody, but be prepared for consequences if you run up on my family.
It's amazing the amount of people through COVID, too, that have become firearms owners, and I think part of the reason why that topic has stayed out of the news headlines in some ways, in terms of legislation and everything else, is because they don't know who owns them. They don't have the data yet. I think there's a lot of blue folks running around that now own guns, and what happens. Most people don't give that right back.
Right. And again, same thing. I would
not willingly.
Go get training. Learn to carry and shoot responsibly.
Learn to disassemble and reassemble.
Please.
Learn safety.
Please. Learn not to put your finger on the trigger in a courtroom. My God, district attorney in the Rittenhouse case.
Well, and that's that's indicative of a lot of the people that have
Alec Baldwin,
misconceptions.
clear the chamber.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Are you insane? You're just going to pick up a firearm and point it at somebody and pull a trigger.
It's so crazy to me. So crazy. What'd you think of that situation?
Insane.
I
just don't know how you get out of this by being like, oh, I didn't know. And everybody's like, oh, this is how you do it on a set. I don't give a shit. You don't pick up a gun and point it at somebody and pull the trigger. And if you do and you kill somebody, this is obviously not self-defense. So watch Rittenhouse get in jail time, right, for having a gun pointed at him, hitting the head with a skateboard, and Baldwin will walk away not defending himself because it was a movie set accident.
A lot of people who don't understand it too, it's going to be hard to get criminal charges on him, and I've said it many times on this show because people, start chiming in and commenting and saying he should be doing 20 years. The hard part is when you do a movie, and Doc knows this, you sign so many disclosures and so much paperwork and indemnifications, and there's reasons for that. And I get it, okay? You're on a movie set, there's tons of stunts, and if it was like Mission Impossible, you might expect something to go south. You get guys jumping off cliffs, Fast and Furious, they're using cars to break falls.
And stuntmen do die fairly frequently.
Yes, and it is a dangerous thing, and we've had a couple of big cases, but it's not an opportunity to turn it in. What I get a kick out of more than anything is after the fact when the Alec Baldwins of the world are like, oh my God, it was given to me loaded, I had no idea, I didn't. Did you check it?
Right. Well, I think that's what the people are talking to you about is you have somebody like him, and many of these actors who are huge, gun criticizers, huge Second Amendment criticizers, yet they make millions of dollars by promoting gunfire and stupid gunfire too, right? Like here, let me stand behind this car and now I'm safe, or the falsehoods where people think they could stand behind a regular wall.
Oh yeah.
And if somebody's shooting, that they're safe.
Yeah, I don't like to get, there are techniques shooting through drywall and everything else. People don't understand the difference between cover and concealment and the different opportunities that present itself. I will say this, the only thing the movies get right are a fridge. It could be cover.
Right.
It could be cover. That's all I'm going to say. Fridges are very fun to shoot.
And if you're in water, you're actually in pretty good shape, actually.
It might be cover.
Yeah.
I can't say officially that it is, but I could say for some reason, fridges are very resilient to gunfire for whatever reason. FYI out there. But don't take that to the bank.
Don't lock yourself in a freezer.
Yeah, don't stay there for a long time. Anything can happen.
This is not medical advice or financial advice.
This is not medical advice, and I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But it's kind of wild. The whole Alec Baldwin thing's kind of wild, and there's just too much irresponsibility on too many people's parts, and that's what I don't like. And what kills me is movie sets, right, Doc? They're supposed to be so liberal. They're supposed to be so wide open. Everybody's like, woke and shit. why were they all running around shooting, and why were the guns loaded? If you're so woke,
and we're glamorizing shooting at people,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
So please go watch all of our movies where we shoot people left and right. But
that always cracks me up.
let me make millions of dollars.
Liam Neeson's like a huge part of that.
Really?
Every single movie he's in, he has a gun, and his anti-gun record's so high.
You know, that's like it'd be like Bill Clinton lecturing you on fidelity in a relationship or something. It's
crazy.
Listen, unless your nose is completely clean, shut the fuck up, right?
Amen.
It's like all these people that want to criticize, climate this and that and the other. It's Chris Cuomo driving. He's a Raptor, right, with a USA flag.
He's
on
up
the back.
on charges.
No, the other Cuomo.
Chris, no, I'm saying he is now too.
Oh, Jesus.
So it's not new. A thing came out. Let me get the story right. Anybody out there that I get it wrong, chime in. I can see some of the comments. And thanks, Eric, for sharing everything. What's up, 3PO and hey, Daryl. The whole thing with Chris Cuomo was a few years back when he left another broadcast, same family of broadcasts, but like another network, local affiliate to national. He groped a woman, and if I'm getting this wrong, I'm sorry. I'm close. I know I am. He groped a woman in front of the husband at a party, and he acknowledges it with an email to the woman. This is kind of new. Because you heard about the Don Lemon one, right? He grabbed his junk and then had some guy sniff his hand, that's fucking hilarious. But I did a thing on this a couple days ago. It's insane, the double standard, right? Insane.
Well, that's the thing. And this is interesting because I think I'm somebody who probably, I guess other people categorize. I think of myself as more liberal. Apparently, as the Overton window shifts, now I'm a right-wing. You know, I like guns, I like low taxes, and so therefore I must be, right wing or
evil.
Whatever. Yeah, oh my God, capitalism!
How dare you?
How dare you? So everything has shifted so far, and I don't know how we get it back. Actually, and you've seen this with a lot of people who consider themselves liberal, right? Like a Rogan or people like that who are now categorized as far right or like wait.
They called Rogan like alt right, and I'm like, what?
So me saying words have meaning makes me alt-right. That's like Bill Maher is now apparently right-wing.
That's amazing. I think
this rant on words having meaning. He's like, no, silence is not violence. Violence is violence.
I think Bill Maher is the key to saving it. Because I think he's establishing the line.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I think here's the problem I've always had fundamentally with right, left, whatever you guys want to call it. And I think the same thing, because there's an interesting shift going on in the medical community. I want to get to that, that they're all starting to go from left to right because to me, the left just doesn't want to put anybody in a box. If you're on the right, we always say like that person's racist or that person's this or they're pro-life. We draw our line. Like we're not cool with that. Oh, you're in the KKK. We're not cool with that. Like
can't be in the club
we don't like that.
Yeah.
Okay. We all admit it. Everybody says, "Have you owned that you're an anti-Semite or this or that?" We're not that. Right. We don't want that. But on the left, it doesn't matter. They're as thick as thieves.
True.
And they're better at just saying it's like global defense.
Yeah, they'll be like the Marxists can sit at the table.
Yeah.
With us.
Yeah.
You wouldn't be like, the fascists can sit at the table with
like
us,
the
right?
Elon Musk tweet the other day, speaking of capitalism to Bernie, was fucking hilarious.
Right.
I shared it on my Instagram, and if anybody saw it, it was hilarious. He said, "You're still alive?" He was like, oh my God. And he used it as a funny pun to be like, I'm going to go sell some stock now,
Right.
Because it's reached a level where, and the funny thing is, everything that they hated Trump for about the tweets and everything else, that's Bernie giving free tax advice right then and there.
Right.
He's basically saying, I'm coming for your money. And everybody's going to be like, okay, we'll sell.
Yeah.
So talk about, showing your deck. It's just unbelievable, the double standard. But the Cuomo Don Lemon thing, I find is a massive amount of hubris in that. It's just so funny to me. And I just think the left and right don't want to categorize. They want to when it's convenient for them. But if that was a right-wing network person and it was Don Lemon with the hand sniff thing, but especially Chris's with the acknowledgement in the email, you'd be gone. It wouldn't even be close. You wouldn't last you'd be gone.
Yeah.
Now, what I want to talk to you about was the shift in the medical community, because we're seeing the same shift in some pockets in education because of the line that's being drawn. But what do they think would alienate all these first responders and all the nurses it's crazy.
Yeah. It's the same thing as usual. Like I have mixed feelings about it. So just continuing off the last point, it's like all of your leaders are lying to you. So all the people that scream about taxes are insider trading and they're using the same loopholes to get out of taxes. those people are full of shit. All the people at Fox that are talking about vaccines, this and that, they're vaccinated. All the Trump's family's all vaccinated, right?
Of course.
All the Republican senators are vaccinated. So everybody's sort of full of shit. They're all grifting to these pocket fringes on the left and the right. Because that's what gets attention, right? That's what goes viral. That's what retweets are. Like, moderate nuance isn't going to go viral.
No.
And, I think that people they're so stuck in their instincts that they're not willing to have their minds changed.
Agreed.
And I think that's sort of scary. And then things turn into religion, right? And we're not paying attention to the newest studies that come out. And I think that's part of what's happened. So, in New Mexico, for example, we are at like crisis standards now, which is so. I'm just like, I work right next to the hospital. I talk to everybody. I understand what's going on in there, right? So would you, we're talking about some cases we have 30 patients for one nurse or something like that,
right?
Because we needed to let them go. So if you're the nurse, there are some fields that I would really like them to get vaccinated. I think nurses is a good place for that to be. But if you're an administrator, would you rather have 0 nurses or would you rather have unvaccinated nurses who likely have been exposed to COVID, who likely have some level of immunity because they've been in the situation the entire time taking care of COVID patients?
Right.
If they've been taking care of COVID patients, they've had COVID. It's so transmissible, right? Or they would have. There's just no way they haven't. And
I agree.
And I think that, if you've had COVID, it would probably be a good idea to get one shot. But, you're pretty well protected. It's not novel to you anymore. And that's what's been jacking up some of my friends lately is if you didn't get the Alpha variant last year and you haven't been vaccinated, you're getting Delta now, it's laying people out. I have a lot of healthy friends that are now carrying around oxygen containers, and they didn't die, but they're not in great shape.
It's definitely a virus. We all can agree that it's definitely something you can catch. And I think it's important that I say that, understand that there are risks to anything that you catch. But I think it's the forced consumption in the media's twist to make you almost responsible but not guilty. They want to they want to hang something on everybody is what I'm seeing play out.
And so both sides get things right here, right? So these vaccines are super efficacious against the wild type, against the Alpha variant, right? Well, 100% of the virus in New Mexico is Delta. So Delta is clearly evading the vaccines that we have out a lot, to the tune of Johnson & Johnson at 3% efficacious at reducing transmission, and to the tune of 54 and 70% for Pfizer and Moderna. So the efficacy is nowhere near as good as it was when it was Alpha variant. So where is the Delta-specific booster that we were promised when they said we could reprogram these things right away? Instead, we're moving on to our 3rd booster, and then with our 4th booster. But why would these boosters be any more efficacious against the virus that's already mutated? So this is where the anti-pharma people are like, hey, so where's the new one? And it's like, well, they have a lot of vaccine they still need to get out, right? So now they start looking right. So the conspiracy theorists start looking right. And then you have the people that, vaccines, this and that and the other. And I've had 2 shots, right? I still have antibodies. So I'm getting tested for antibodies every month. When I don't have antibodies, I'll consider a booster shot, right? But it's not novel to me anymore. And I would really prefer, if I'm going to get a booster shot, to space it out and get something specific to a variant. If it's all Delta or if it's all Lambda at the time, why would I get another shot of Alpha variant when you guys say you have the technology to give me a Delta or a Lambda variant?
Can we agree that the mask is theater at this point? So
during this entire pandemic, I think we've got now 1 RCT on masks out of Bangladesh, I believe is where it was from. And it showed somewhere in the range of 1 to 9% reduction for surgical and essentially none for cloth, right? So, Rand Paul has pointed this out. Z-Dog on YouTube has also pointed this out, is, vaccines will keep you out of the hospital generally. They're losing efficacy over time. N95 masks, when worn appropriately all the time, brand new ones, are pretty good at it. Surgical masks, not great, pretty poor. Cloth masks, really, the data shows that they don't do a whole lot. And when you look at the population studies from state to state, so you can look at when North Dakota and South Dakota had a mask mandate, no difference, right? Colorado and New Mexico. In fact, the Democratic governor of Colorado just now came out and said, we're not going to reimpose a mask mandate because we're looking at New Mexico, and they've had a mask mandate this entire time, and their numbers are almost exactly the same. So, yeah, I mean, So we have 2 conversations happening, and this is the problem with public health. Public health on its own is designed to ignore the individual, particularly the people on the peripheries, right? The 2% on each end, where a clinician's job is to look at the individual and give you the specific care that you need based on your health and your
situation. Yeah.
Exactly. So there are people that can't get vaccinated, right? There are people that they have medical conditions. And that decision should always be between them and their physician, right? If they and their physician feel like this is not the right thing for them, that should be an exemption 100% all the time. So, I'm somebody who's definitely pro-vaccine. I'm against mandates. I don't think they're useful. I think they back people into corners. I think if you want somebody to come to your side, beating them over the head with the loss of their ability to make a living is not a way to do it. And when you take away somebody's job or their livelihood, you might as well have a self-defense case here. You're taking away somebody's life.
Yeah, and they did that to way too many first responders and too many medical professionals. And I know,
heroes, right?
Yeah,
heroes work here, except for now when you won't take your third shot, when you've already had COVID and it was mild on your first time having it. All right, we know that it's going to be more mild, most likely, on your second shot. But now you lose your pension, you lose your livelihood because you won't take a shot. That again, there is a point where the risk benefit doesn't add up, right? When you're talking young children, at some point we have to look, what's the risk benefit here, right? If we know that less than 150 children have died from this, but we know that very strong immune responses can, kick off autoimmune diseases or things like that, why are we using a uniform approach across different demographics? Of course, elderly people should be getting a booster shot. Of course they should, right? If they want to. If they want to. We can jump out of airplanes. You just talked about signing waivers to have actors shoot guns at you in this country. Yeah. So as long as you know the risk, you can go to a jiu-jitsu class and get choked to death possibly, right?
Possibly.
This is America. You're allowed to chew. You're allowed to smoke, right? It's up to you as a consenting adult to make decisions about your health. And we've decided that it's up to the government, which is completely inept at literally everything that it does, to be able to tell us what we can and can't do with our lives. And listen, if you want to wear a mask, 2, 3, cool, awesome. You should be allowed to do that, right? If you don't want to get vaccinated, listen, at this point, you're aware of the consequences, you're aware of the risks, you can take that on. But I don't need you to be vaccinated for my vaccine to work. That's utter nonsense.
And I think we know what's coming. I think Virginia was a precursor to what we're going to see. And I think it's going to be somewhat knee-jerk in some ways and probably very warranted. You're going to see a lot of states flip and a lot of those House seats flip. And they said, like Biden's numbers, because I've said it all along, the story of him being insane is going to be a greater story as time goes on.
Yeah.
And I think the press is already starting to chew it up. I think they're seeing it. I think you're already starting to see SNL skits. You're already starting to see it go that way because how can you resist it? And this wouldn't be the first time the press has turned on someone.
Sure.
I just think that story, they're already starting to gang up on Kamala a little too because it's too juicy. Do you see that?
Yeah.
It's too juicy.
You look at who's really pulling the strings here. And, I don't dislike Joe Biden. I think he's obviously a better choice than Bernie Sanders or,
he was the best of that pack.
Now, the reason why we liked him more is he was perceived to be more blue dog, more moderate, right? But he wants to score points from the far left. And now we're looking at Jimmy Carter 2.0 when you're looking at inflation of 6 to 10%. We're just printing money and throwing it around and, closing our pipelines, but then asking OPEC to produce more oil and shipping it across the ocean to us. I mean, everybody's looking at the gas prices and the price of their food.
That'll kill them alone.
And that's what we care about, right? It's kitchen table issues. And we were misled the last 4 years, both by Trump's behavior and by the media's, fervent Trump derangement syndrome about him, into thinking that tweets and phrases and our feelings are more important than the cost of our groceries and the amount of your 401k growth. Like, what affects you, right?
Yeah.
It's not burning down Kenosha, right? It's not some criminal having a conflict with another criminal or a criminal getting into something with a police officer. It's what does your 401k one look like? What do your taxes look like locally?
Gas.
And I think people are being reawoken to that, unfortunately, because the economic policies. But some of this was the Trump administration too, so we can't blame it 100% on Biden. I mean, he was doing stimulus checks too. We all saw it coming. Everybody's like, oh, it's transitory inflation. My guy, we're going to print trillions of dollars and give people money who aren't contributing to the economy. I don't think there's going to be inflation and put interest rates at 0%.
Yeah, I think his other bills are going to be dead on arrival. I don't think,
especially at this point.
Yeah,
right?
I don't see any of the mid players getting behind anything because it's too much of a risk for them politically. He's used all the political capital. So that's why you have guys like Joe Manchin backing way off of a lot of stuff, and people are looking for more data because the voters are going to vote on this
Right.
via the election coming up, and they know they're going to get sauced, and they know it's going to be ugly, and they're already like, we need to batten down the hatches and think about survival here, because I'm going to tell you what's going to happen, and this is the exciting part. When the country has the knee-jerk reaction and everything goes red, they're going to immediately move to start to put in some type of protection around social media, some type of, whether it's publishing law, whether it's other things. They're going to start to put some, because they're coming. They're coming for Jack. They're coming for Zuckerberg. He's already cooling on a lot of stuff.
Right.
They're already starting to see it coming. You're a big social media guy. What do you see coming?
I mean, they could flip the switch on you at any time. I mean, the fact that, you look at China, right? So everybody remembers when Jack Ma sort of disappeared from the limelight for a few months, came back looking a little bit skinnier. In those countries, the government can make or break the richest guy in the country, right?
Yep.
In our country, Jack Dorsey or Mark Zuckerberg are capable of silencing the president of the United States of America.
It's crazy.
So even Bernie backed Trump on that, right? He said, this is a bad precedent. This is the leader of the free world that doesn't have the ability to reach to his platform. And a lot of lawyer friends of mine were like, the First Amendment case where Trump and AOC and several people had to unblock people because they considered social media the public square. Then retrospectively, then you don't get that First Amendment because... reasons.
We don't feel like it.
Listen, and January 6th was shit, right? Like everybody that was there, if you're there and you're listening, I don't like you. If you were in the Capitol building tearing things up, you have a problem. You need to go see a counselor. You're just as gone as these BLM rioters. Be a reasonable American. Don't destroy property. Don't assault police officers. This is nonsense. So just because that happens doesn't mean you take away the leader of the free world's freedom of speech.
Yeah.
The precedent that set is mortifying, and they're just letting you know too. And again, same thing with Alex Jones, who had a huge platform. If they can do it to him, they can definitely do it to you or me. If they can do it to Trump, who can't they do it to? Right?
Yeah.
And that's scary.
I think that they know it's coming. I think they know it is, and that's why I said, look at gun rights. Look at social media. You're seeing them cool on a lot of these issues, hoping maybe we can kind of go back into the hole and hide for a minute. That's at least what I see,
right?
In my opinion. I think they're trying to cool these issues down. Whether or not they do anything effective to go after them is going to be up for debate. I think there's going to be a little bit of fear, but I see publishing law creeping into social media for sure. I think it has to.
Something has to happen, right?
Either that, I've been a big proponent, and I don't know how you feel about this. I haven't talked to you about it.
Or are these companies too big to be reined in? Like think about Google and Facebook. They're the most powerful companies, both financially and information control, in the history of this planet. Think about if Facebook wants you to win or Google wants you to win. Not only can they fund your opponent, not only can they suppress your ad reach and your algorithmic reach, but also they own all this information, the data that you have, all your text messages, all your emails, your search histories. It's all stored forever. So if you really threaten them, you don't think that those companies could just make you go away or take you out?
I wanted to ask you: are we marching towards an impossible standard for people?
Yes, 1,000%.
Just everybody has to be perfect.
Yeah.
It's
where's
the line?
Everybody else has to be perfect, right?
Yeah.
Except for we were talking about. Listen,
I get
man,
what you're saying.
I don't want you, unless you live on an Earth ship and don't ever drive a car or fly in an airplane, you should probably stop browbeating people over climate change because you're consuming just like everybody else. You're using plastics just like everybody else. Keep your own nose clean. I don't want to hear it. Same thing like we were talking about Clinton. I don't want to hear Bill Clinton lecturing people on fidelity or Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody stay in your lane. Unless you know that your house is clean, you should probably stop judging other people.
Yeah, it's kind of, Bill Maher brought this up, and that's why I think, we need a list every week of who's being canceled.
Yeah, right.
It's become to that point. And my fear...
and it'll come for them too, right?
Right. My greater fear in the whole thing is, the bottom line is we're marching towards an impossible standard, or we're going to come for you. Whether it's vaccinated, unvaccinated, whether it's this, whether it's that, whatever the standard is, we're marching towards this place where it's that's impossible to maintain, no matter what it is.
Right.
Does everybody have a bad boyfriend or girlfriend somewhere? Sure. Yeah. Does everybody have a horrible parent or somebody that maybe drank or beat you? Whatever the woe is. I'm not judging. Everybody has that.
Sure.
So now do we turn around and judge everybody? Maybe you made a decision. You don't want to get a shot or you don't want to get this. We're just marching towards this place of no one can say, hey, I understand that.
Right. What's not respecting other people's decisions and like our office, for example, right? Like I encouraged everybody to get vaccinated, right? I'm fully vaccinated for now. I guess that maybe that changes, right? Oh, if you haven't had 4, you're not.
Yeah.
For now, right? But we're not going to do a mandate. I don't believe in that. I'm not going to tell my people what they need to inject into their bodies. We will follow the state guidance when and where it is, up until the point of where body autonomy goes out the window. I don't believe in that. We're never going to have a vaccine mandate at my office. It's just not going to happen. And I understand where they're coming from. My parents won't get vaccinated, and they should. They're in their 60s, but am I going to fight with them about it? No, my time with them is short. I'm not going to have some ideological battle with them. I can respect them and understand where they're coming from.
You can raise the concern.
I can think that they're wrong, right? And there's a lot of things I think people are wrong about, right? Raiders fans, I think you're wrong. But that doesn't mean we're not friends.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that we're not buddies.
I said it the other night. My heart breaks for Derrick Carr.
Right.
It just breaks for Derrick Carr. Guy can't catch a break. 8 years in the league, puts up good numbers. I mean,
I'm friends with people on the far right, the far left. Listen, if you're a good person, that's all I care about is your character, right? Like if you mean well, that goes a long way for me. We may disagree on, economic policy. We may disagree on gun policy. We may disagree on a lot of different things. But that doesn't make us mortal enemies. And, like the election, people were breaking up families because this person was voting for Trump or this person didn't like Trump. And, imagine destroying your family unit over people that don't even know you exist.
yeah.
Right? And this is what's going to happen politically, too. If the boogeyman of Trump isn't here, people forget that nobody likes Biden, right? Like, nobody wanted Biden there. They just thought that he was tolerable and that he could beat Trump, right? So that was it. So now that Trump's not around, people are like, the left is like, he's too far right for us. And then the right is like, wow, this guy doesn't even know where he is. He's destroying the economic status that we gained, the energy independence.
The problem is I think they mortgaged everything to get Biden in.
Everything.
I think they mortgaged
gave up
everything
to get rid of Trump.
And they couldn't wait it out another 4. And now what I think is going to come back is I think we're going to win huge in the midterms. I think he's going to win if he runs again, especially if he runs against Biden head to head. That's terrifying to them right now, especially if he goes out and gets like a Tulsi Gabbard or somebody like that to run with him. Then it's even more terrifying. Forget about
not JFK Jr.
Wait, forget about having DeSantis and for 8 more years after that. They could theoretically have tossed it away for 12 years.
Yeah, I don't. Obviously, you're friends with the Trumps. I don't see him.
Hey now,
unless unless he can get his social media back. I just don't know where you're going to get the reach to get a victory like that.
I don't think he needs it.
I think people underestimate how much people on the left really, really hate Trump.
Yeah.
They will show up just to get rid of him.
I will say this. If they mortgaged everything in the sense that I think they mortgaged everything in terms of votes and everything else, and everybody kind of understand what I'm saying, if they really did leverage because you never, let me put it this way, guys, you never get a second time to go back to the well the way you went to the well the first time. If you catch my drift, somebody will be on to you and it'll end up in the paper, and it's very hard to hide. I think enough came out that we know I'm trying to choose my words carefully here, guys, but understand what I'm saying for the YouTube gods. I think they mortgaged a lot more, and I think it's putting them in a bind now. And I will say this more importantly, they didn't want her, and he ended up with her as a running partner. From what I heard inside, was that he originally wanted Michelle Obama really bad. She didn't want to do it. She turned it down, and I think that might have even come out. It might be something that's noted. I know 2 other people that had turned it down. And what happened was, because of how he got it and everybody mysteriously bowed out, you see Buttigieg on the cabinet. You see all these cabinet members. You see her.
It's obvious.
Yeah, he horse traded. It was a horse trade. I mean, I'll say.
And the Democratic establishment didn't want Bernie, right? Mm-hmm. Because they like to talk the talk, but they don't actually want to pay taxes themselves, right?
Yeah. And there's a lot of that. So I chose my words carefully on that, and I just want everybody to understand that there's extreme amount of power plays that went on here, and I think they mortgaged more than they should have for the next 4 years to maybe potentially lose the next 12.
Well, when I look back at this, this all comes back, and now, like we said, the dossier stuff has just come out, and it was covered up, and here are the facts now. But now we're 5 years later. It was Hillary's time, and the DNC sort of works like this, right? It's like you wait your time, and then it's your time. And they did the piper strategy. Everybody knows about it, where they decided they were going to help to pick the media involved also, right? Ted Cruz or Donald Trump. The people they thought wouldn't be palatable to the moderate voter. And they let Trump get too big for his britches. So then it became this moral imperative, right, where we have to do everything. And it did expose the media's bias, right? They just said, screw it, we don't even care.
We're going all in, yeah.
Because we have some sort of moral imperative to get Donald Trump. And that became the modus operandi for every aspect of their life. Can you imagine being like 70 years old and you're going to spend 7 years of your life fixated on some other person? Imagine these guys on MSNBC and CNN. Every day they wake up and they have to talk about somebody they hate. Every single day for years.
Insane.
That means you start dreaming about the guy. You're talking about him so much.
Yeah,
it's wild.
You know, and Youngkin in Virginia showed us the path, and I think once the path is laid out, everybody's going to follow suit. And I think people have to understand.
And I think you mentioned it, people like Elon Musk and Bill Maher and Joe Rogan and these people are also showing you the same thing. Listen, we're willing to let go of some of these, social issues that, historically were fought on the right. And we're going to settle for words meaning the words that they mean. Yeah. Right? Words having a definition that I don't have to, have 17 different, adverbs and pronouns for me to be a reasonable person. I don't have to describe myself. I am Beau Hightower, and I'm half Mexican, and I am...
And I'm wearing a black shirt today. I saw that Microsoft. I
have some gray in my beard, and I'm like, what the fuck world is this? Yeah. How about you're a human first, an American second, and whatever else down the line? Like, how about the content of our character? That would be a nice thing. Yeah. That your word means something, right? When you say something, you do it, right? You take accountability for your actions. You have freedom, but with that freedom is accountability. And these are things that really, frankly, I don't think anybody wants to have anymore is accountability. And the whole world has turned into snowflakes. It started on the left, it swung back to the right, and now it's back on the left again.
It's terrifying.
And nobody, it was funny. I posted something about Singapore not offering healthcare to people that were unvaccinated. They weren't going to get free COVID care anymore. In the comment section, the left-wingers turned into capitalists and the right-wingers turned into socialists.
I had I had a funny conversation with someone the other day that's a very well-off person and good people. I don't want to get into the when and where, but because they're not a public person. But they were, let's just say they were leftists with some California in them and a little bit of in-between. But they were like, I want equal. I want a world where no one loses. And I'm like, huh? Like, I'm having this conversation. They know who I am and they know what I do, and let's just put it that way. But they're like, I want every competition to be equal. And I said, listen, we're on the way back to my place. I said, you got a Louis bag, and then we can give that stuff back. I mean, I know some homeless guys along the way that wouldn't mind it. You got your checkbook? And they're like, I don't mean that. Well, what do you mean? And that's the problem, is it? So a lot of people say this, communism doesn't work because people underestimate the amount of time someone's willing to wait in line for bread. Okay. And that's a common sense way to explain something. Now, I try to explain to people, you can't have an idea that's just a concept. Okay. You have to have something that actually makes sense and is applicable and actually works. You can't say, I want everything to be equal, because it turns into a slippery slope. And I'm actually somebody that could be convinced UBI is a good thing. I'm not one of those people. I could be convinced certain things make sense. If you were going to get rid of the welfare programs, if you were going to diminish the welfare programs and put in some form of UBI, then that gives people more freedom of choice. It's like a lot of people say, are you for a permit for a machine gun? Well, of course I am, because then the permitting process allows for instructors to instruct, and that pays them. And I like that because I like the instruction cycle. And I think that there should be more green permits given out, but I think it should be a permitted process, and people should learn from qualified instructors, and the instructors should make money. And that's how the cycle works. So sometimes it does play into the cycle and does make sense. Now, people have misconstrued that and took it as, I'm for permits for all guns. It's not that I'm for permits for every gun. I am for a permitted process if the instructors get paid and we're able to spin that wheel around. I want people to make money too.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. It's funny we talk about communism because now people, and the right has now morphed what that word means. They're like, they're forcing vaccines. You're a communist. Oh, it's an economic system where the government controls the means of production. Why don't words have any meaning anymore? So, communism does work, right? When there's not a written language, when there's not money, and when there's an incredibly small population. So for hunter-gatherer tribes, communism worked great, right? There's a village of indigenous people.
Don't they call those homesteads?
I mean, yeah.
I get it. I get it.
Or Amish or whatever, right? So there is no money. So everybody sort of has a job in a village. But as soon as you introduce written language or money, it's gone.
It's gone.
It cannot work because the law of the jungle is capitalism, right?
I agree.
It is the law of it's the nature. Everything goes through it. So there are some small utopia pockets where it can show up. But anything over 15, 20 people... And so why do we develop language, right? It was to keep track of money. When we had grains, when we could actually feed a lot of people, then we had permanent settlements. Well, guess what? Some people are either going to be luckier or better
balance sheet
at it. And so now you have a bunch of grain. So how do you keep track of it? So you didn't need language without money. And then why did you do it? Because you needed to keep track of it.
When you make when you actually print money, one of the first things you put on it is language.
Right.
Whether that's a picture or that's a written word, you put language on it.
So of course communism can never work. Yeah. And it's been tried everywhere in different ethnic groups, different regions, different religious groups, and none of them work for a reason because it's against human nature. You're not going to be incentivized to work hard if you're capped. That's one thing with our team and our production. Nobody's ever capped. If you want to work harder and more, we will always find a way for you to make more money. You're never going to cap out, no matter what it is. I'll figure out a way. We talk about that. Like I pay my team like 70% of the revenue that comes in, right? And guess what? I've never had to replace somebody.
Makes sense.
Pay your people and incentivize them to help make you more money too. So everybody wins.
And I think that's a system that is starting to bang on a lot of different industries. And I think it's starting to make sense. I'd love to see that spread more and more in healthcare. I think there's too much money chewed up by the bureaucracy of healthcare.
Admin and, just so the leftists are sort of right when you talk about private insurance, right? How much of that money goes to salaries of people saying no along the way? Yeah, they do have a point there, right?
Right.
And
100%.
And like you're with UBI, I think we should have a catastrophic health insurance program for everybody, right? You get cancer, you slip and fall. I think in a developed country, we should have that. But also accountability, right? If you're going to be obese, that's cool, but you're going to have to pay for your health care and all your medications. If you want to smoke cigarettes, that's fine. Pay for it. If you want to do drugs, pay for it. If you want to not get vaccinated, pay for it.
The reason I'm a fan of UBI, and I know everybody out there would jump on me, and I'm not a fan of the F word's a stretch, but I'm a fan.
He's in the Yang Gang, guys.
I'm in.
He's Yang Gang.
But here's what I see. With UBI, I see the possibility to clean up welfare programs. And if you're willing to clean up the welfare programs, that's when I could be sold on UBI.
That means you have to have no victims, which is never going to happen, right? And no fraud.
You're not wrong.
Good luck with that.
You're not wrong. You're absolutely right.
There always has to be an oppressor, oppressee. And that's one thing that, again, as somebody who's sort of liberal, like every situation is viewed through the lens of there's a victim and a victor, or an oppressor and oppressee. So we're never given the rules of any given situation. So then we're given the rules, and then it happens over here, and they're like, oh, no. The intersectionality chart, I look down, and this person's more a victim than you, so therefore you're the bad guy.
They win. They win.
We're dealing with that in New Mexico, right? So LULAC, which is a Hispanic, rights group or whatever, is now fighting with the state because the state is now teaching, and again, we're a majority state. We're a majority Hispanic, 49% Hispanic, 39% white, 12% Indian. They're now teaching the Hispanic people that they are the subjugators. So like Mexican Americans, including first generation immigrants, that they're the bad guys and they're oppressing the Native Americans, even though most of us are part Native too. And so you could just see the Overton window slide, right? So yeah, maybe Latinos are the minority in New Hampshire, but in New Mexico we're the majority, right? So now you're the bad guy, even though you're somewhere else.
It's crazy. It is crazy.
Just like Dave Chappelle. So the black people are the victim, but then he criticizes transgender, and now he's the oppressor again. Plus he's male. So like we need a flow chart to see who's the oppressor or the oppressee in any given situation.
We need a press packet.
And everybody's fragile. They always talk about white fragile, black fragile. Everybody stop being victims. Stop it. Put your big boy pants on. And listen, you're not going to be the best at anything, right? Look, Donald Trump and LeBron James are both objectively wealthier than me, have more influence. One can dunk a basketball. They're both taller. And that's okay. I don't get to be the best at everything. And that's fine. Know where you fit in. Don't feel like everything has to be equal. Why should I have a $4 billion like Trump or be able to create a basketball team like LeBron when I'm not objectively as good at business or as good at basketball? That's okay. We don't have to be equal. We're not equal. I'm not 6'9". I'm not some business magnate, and we shouldn't expect for those things to be the same. They're the best at what they do for a reason, right? Hell, Biden's great at being a politician. You don't get to be there for 44 years if you're not good at being able to maintain.
He's really good at that Potomac two-step.
You know, I mean, look at it. Yeah. You know, so you have to acknowledge, like, people don't get to those places by accident, right?
He could be the smartest guy in the room with that act. He's kind of like, I didn't see it. I don't know what's going on. Right? Like, he could be the smartest.
Dude, everybody knows somebody like that sort of plays dumb, and that's like the
everybody got an uncle like that, or you know, that's true.
We got a guy in our office. We call it Huck Finning. This guy's a pretty boy, right? His whole life, I don't know how to do this, and then some girl will come do it for him as he blinks his eyelashes at him, and now he knows to do this all the time. I'm like, I don't know how to attach an email.
Yeah,
I'm like, bro, get the fuck out of here.
What do you mean we invaded?
I didn't know. Yeah, okay, buddy.
Now, considering, I want to ask you one last question because I know time's sensitive. You're a very busy man, all kinds of appointments. I wanted to ask you, since you put me on the hot seat and brought in the Trump relationship, are we ever going to see John Jones in a ring again?
Yes.
How soon?
I would say first quarter of next year. I think he gets the winner of the Ngannou Cyril Gane fight.
You heard it here, folks. We asked the hard-hitting questions, so we will see him.
Yeah. Yeah.
First quarter.
Cancel me. I don't even care. Cancel me. I don't give a shit. John's my homie. I got his back.
Cancel me.
Cancel me.
No, I think, look, he's a wild man. He'll be back in there.
Wait, cage fighters are wild?
Shocker.
Wow.
Dun, dun, dun.
Unbelievable.
Breaking. We heard it here first where we ask the hard-hitting questions. Listen, I love having you. I know you got to get rolling. We've gone for over an hour, and you got to get rolling. I want to thank Eric for sharing all of Dr. Beau Hightower's links. I think they're all there. Let everybody know what's going on with you, where they can find you, and how they can reach you.
Yo, we're on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, maybe Twitter, just the name Beau Hightower, and just
TikTok.
Yeah, I'm on TikTok. Yeah, the communist.
It's like 1 million, right?
Communist you got like app, and I have like 500,000 or something.
What are you up to now? You're up on everything. 2 million, 1.5 million?
Like 4 or 5, maybe.
Look at that.
Something like that. You know?
There it is.
But what I really want to tell you is go give this guy reviews. Tune into the show. He's got great guests on all the time, and I'm an honor to be on this guest podcast.
Listen, I appreciate having you, and I appreciate everything nice you say. We've been friends for a long enough time now. It's really, when you're in town, I love sneaking 5 minutes with you, 10 minutes, spending some time catching up. I really appreciate our friendship over the years, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you for coming in. I really appreciate it. Hey, all the links are down below. Go give this guy a follow. Twitter, everything. We'll be sharing this out. Go check it out everywhere podcasts are heard. And like Dr. Beau said, leave reviews. Appreciate you guys. I want to thank a few of the sponsors. I want to thank Gallo Technologies, Rhino Metals, Blackwater Ammunition, Inforce Weapon Lights, Volquartz and Firearms, Sig Sauer. Go buy a Sig. Pulsar Thermal Imaging Technology. Do some hunting at night. Be smart. Save a life. And I appreciate Dr. Beau for coming in. And I want to thank all you guys. We are out.